Thank you very much, Mr. Alpha, and thank you to my viewers in Sierra Leone and in the UK and all over Africa. Thank you.
Okay, in London, we've got lawyer Amido Ayub Kanu, a man who's been on the show already. He's an expert, a man that understands the ins and outs of African politics, but also big issues happening in the African continent. Lawyer Amido Ayub Kanu, thank you for being on AYV.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Alpha, for having us.
Thank you. In Canada, obviously, this is a global show. We've got Mr. Dauda Mansari, you know, a man that understands business management and also finance. Mr. Dauda Mansari, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your patience today. All our guests have been very patient. We had some technical problems, and we want to apologize for the delay. Thank you for being on AYV.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, excellent. I want to start here in the studio. It's been a very, very busy few months for the African continent. Nigeria, I want us to talk about Nigeria first. You know, we know Nigeria is one of the, well, is the biggest economy in Africa, very important player in Africa politics, and many analysts talked about the importance of democracy in Nigeria that was spread across the continent. And we know Nigeria had elections, there was problems, and the opposition presidential candidate Peter Obi, who came third in elections, has filed a formal petition in court seeking to overturn the ballot won by the ruling party candidate. The question to you, what's happening in Africa? We know we have some turbulence. You know, there's a lot of problems in terms of peace. You know, some countries are making progress, obviously. Where are we? What's happening? Because these are lessons that we're learning, and many analysts say this is going to be a long battle in the courts. The opposition has already cried foul before they call in the votes. What do you think? What do you think about Nigeria? What do you think? What can we learn from Nigeria?
We can learn a lot from Nigeria, Mr. Alpha. And as an African, I always look forward to see Nigeria set up an example to all African countries. I was disappointed when I saw what happened in Nigeria. The issue when people say free and fair elections, I'm always skeptical the word free. It can be free, but it cannot be fair. In Nigeria, the elections were free, but they were not fair. And I've never seen a court in Africa that has overturned an election result, with the exception of, I think it happens in Kenya. But West Africa, we have a long way to go. I realize our democracy is still young. In the case of Nigeria, it has been a lot of military coup. They are used to that, but they are coming out from that side of the bad part of politics. And what we are expecting now, as myself from Sierra Leone, and we are having our election next week, I was looking forward to Nigeria to set the bar. But that did not happen. And I was so disappointed. I spoke to a lot of colleagues who are from Nigeria, especially in my place of work. They were so disappointed. So going forward in the issue of Nigeria, we hope and we pray the courts do their due diligence and follow the constitution and come up with something sooner or later. And we also, I just want to address the issue of, I know you're going to go there later, on the issue of international observers. We keep depending on the word international observers. I'm fed up. Why can't we conduct our own elections without having observers? When did you see international observers in London or in the United Kingdom? We keep saying, oh, international observer. They are there to observe. They are not there to conduct our elections. They came from different capitals. They feed back to their embassies and to their capitals. At the end of the day, they will tell you the election has been conducted, and that's what they are there for. They are not there to give results. They are not there to decide our elections. So, coming back to Nigeria, Mr. Alpha,
Yeah.
um, Nigeria need to set a practice example for us in Sierra Leone and in the whole continent.
Yeah.
If they don't, the continent is doomed.
Right. Okay. Yes, I can see. Obviously, in Nigeria, the opposition, like we said, Peter Obi, is not happy. The case is in court. The Labour Party chair, Julius Obore, during the election said the election is irretrievably compromised, and we have totally lost faith in the entire process. And he even demanded that what he referred to as sham of an election should be immediately cancelled. This is during the time of the election. So obviously we're talking about credibility. The opposition is making those statements. Let me now go to Lawyer Amiru Ayub Kanu. Lawyer Kanu, you obviously follow some of these issues. We want to learn some lessons from Nigeria, but if you've had Lawyer Kamara has said, there's not much, to bring forth for what's happening in Nigeria. What's your take? What do you think? What's happening?
Yeah, once more, thanks. My take with Nigeria, the oppositions, the way they are crying about the result. The thing here is the oppositions here, like the Labour Party in Nigeria and the PDP party, are they democratic themselves? Instead of crying to their own neck, the National Electoral Commission for Nigeria. Because Peter Obi himself, if I remember, he was petitioned for being the presidential candidate for the Labour Party because people were objecting. Because he was at PDP. And he went to, because he's not going to succeed in having the flag leadership of the PDP, which particular ones, he went to the Labour Party. And automatically became the flag bearer, and people petitioning him in court. He won the petition. But so the party themselves, this is all over Africa. The party themselves internally, they are not respecting democracy, or they are not going according to what they would like them to be subjected to in the national polls. That means they want the national polls to be free and fair, but when it comes to their internal democracy, they are flouting the rules. That they are going against their own rules. But they want the National Electoral Commission and the National Electoral Commission to obey the rules. Why is they themselves, their internal processes are not free and fair? This spreads across the country and sub-region. So what we learn from the Nigeria is there is a lot for us, especially how not to conduct election to give results. Because at the end of the day, look at the numbers. Nigeria is 150 to 200 million the population, and we have valid votes of not more than 30 million. I think the winner got about 10 million or 8 million. Can you imagine that? 150 to 200 million, and you have a winner of 10 million votes. It's ridiculous. But again, the parties themselves are not democratic. This is a new thing to us. This is a stranger. The democracy in Africa is a stranger we don't know how to handle, or we are learning how to handle it, to understand. So there are lots of things we need to really understand about this democracy. We are crying, we the oppositions, or the oppositions are crying against the National Electoral Commission. And for the party themselves, their internal democracy are not free and fair. So how do you expect the National Electoral Commission to be free and fair? It's beyond my comprehension. It's a crocodile tears. So let me stop here for now.
Okay, excellent. I think it's a very important point you've raised, because if you're crying for unfairness, in legal principles, we talked about going to the court with clean hands. So if your hands are, dirty, and you're not practicing proper democracy, then it's a difficult scenario. Your argument is undermined, and I think that's something that opposition leaders have to learn. If you want to cry about the fact that democracy is not proper or is not being handled well, you should also try and follow the principles of democracy. Before I go to our next guest, who is in Canada, waiting for us there patiently, thank you so much. um, I just want to bring in uh, the National Democratic Institute and International Republican Institute Joint International Election Observation Mission. Obviously, we're going to go into that after, about observations, but it's damning here. It talks about elections in Nigeria marred by vote manipulation. So we can see even the people that are monitoring the election have an issue. Let's go now to Mr. Dada Masari. So Dada, if I just we're talking about the issues of elections in Africa. It's important that we learn lessons across Africa, but also across the globe. You're in Canada. What do you think about the elections happening in Africa, particularly in Nigeria? Because they've had the elections, there are more elections coming. And what do you think we can learn from Canada, for example, or what can we learn from around the world?
Thank you very much for having me. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, we can hear you very clearly.
Thank you. Um, Again, elections in Africa, we all know we've been hearing malpractices for ever, right? And I'm not surprised to hear malpractices in Nigeria per se. However, if I'm to infer by your question, saying what we can learn from Nigeria and how we can move forward, I believe elections are fundamental right for every citizen that is eligible to participate to be there and cast his or her vote. However, as you've already mentioned, we've not seen that in recent times in Africa. If we can learn something from what happened in Nigeria, it is for us to put our house in order. Have we had proper election preparation for our election that is upcoming on the 24th? Are all parties satisfied of what is going on? Have we put fundamental principles for us to be deterred from what happened in Nigeria? Have we had things in place for us to be satisfied that this election will be peaceful, just, and credible election? So those are things we should learn from what happened in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we saw a lot of turbulence right now, even from Peter Obi. But in our own house, I meant Sierra Leone, we are seeing a lot of, hearing a lot of noises. It is vital for us to put things in order to avoid what happened in Nigeria to happen in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is a very young country after post-independence. We expect to have things in place by now after 60 years. So these are things we should be looking at. What happened? What went wrong in Nigeria? How can we correct those? That's Those are the principles we should be looking at.
Okay. I think most of you are subscribing to the fact that we have things to learn. Before we move, I actually want to talk about the global concept of elections happening around the world. What do you think, Mr. Kamara? What do you think? What can we learn from things happening around the world, particularly in Europe? For example, in Turkey just had an election, and the opposition in Turkey. So this is not only an African problem, it looks like. Turkey has a problem, the opposition is already crying. There are problems there. For example, the opposition leader denounced and said that this is the most unfair election in recent times. And commentators are saying, that the incumbent has more access, for example, to the media. What do you think? Is this something of a global nature, not only an African problem, or is that something we can do?
Mr. Alpha, thank you again. This is not an African problem only. We've seen it happen in the USC recently, where in the heart of democracy, the incumbent president said no, he did not lose the election. So this is where it all started. So it's not an African issue only. So on the issue of Turkey, Turkey has never been a democratic country. We can't just sit down here and say, oh, Turkey.
Well, the Turkey president might disagree with that.
No,
anyway,
well,
he's not here.
He's entitled to disagree. But Mr. Alpha, let me just draw your attention to a constitutional issue, which we have, which is the main key factor in Africa continent. How can a sitting president or a sitting government appoint electoral commissioner? This is happening all over Africa. They say Turkey not a vote for Christmas. A sitting president, not only about, let's forget, I'm not going to mention Australia, Nigeria, the sitting president appointed the electoral commissioner and the entire body. What do you expect?
Okay, so these
are fundamental constitutional issues.
Yeah. So we need to look at the institutions, how
the institution, powers, how the appointment is coming about.
Okay.
The appointment of electoral commissioner, electoral body, the appointment of judges. So this is where we have to start looking at if we really want to go forward.
Okay.
The current electoral commissioner in Nigeria was appointed by the outgoing president.
Okay. So that's a very important point. Only there, I think that's something we're going to talk about. We're going to take a quick break, and you're watching Global Voices here from our studio here in London, the show that brings you diaspora views, but also international current affairs, things happening around the world. This is a show that analyzes the big issues. When we come back, we're going to continue to our guest. This is a very, very important subject we're talking about. Election is fundamental to democracy. And we know democracy is obviously the contract. That's where, things start in any nation. Obviously, the process from the people to the politicians. We'll be right back in few minutes. Stay tuned on our platforms, on our social media platforms. Obviously, we are broadcasting from our channel in Sierra Leone, channel 33, and we're also broadcasting on our online platform, including our Facebook platform. Stay tuned. We'll be back. Okay, welcome back to Global Voices, broadcasting here in our studio in London. We continue the conversation about elections in Africa. and the role of electoral observers, international electoral observers in African election, as the role has become very, very significant in few years. In the studio here with me, I've got lawyer Abubakar Black Kamara, chair of the Crawford Tenant and Resident. Thank you so much for being patient here with us.
Thank you.
Excellent. And in London, we've got lawyer Amidu Ayub Kanu. Lawyer Amidu Kanu, thank you for being there, waiting patiently whilst we take a break.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And in Canada, we've got Mr. Dawda Mansare, obviously a man that understands some of these issues, and he is being very kind to be patient with us. Thank you, Mr. Mansare.
Thank you very much.
You're following us on Channel 33 and on our online platform with me, Alpha Jallo, here broadcasting from our studios in London. Before we go on the break, we were talking about the institutions. I think that's very important.
Okay.
You mentioned about the incumbents. Sometimes it could be the incumbents appointing the electoral commission, for example, the commissioners. And you wanted to talk about that should be independent from politics or the government.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Alpha. These are issues I've been looked at for quite a long time, because for the past 10 years I've been taking some of the issues that leading us to where we are now. And I looked at it that until the continent itself, Africa itself, resolve those issues, the appointment of electoral commissioners, the staff, by the sitting president, until we iron out those issues democratically, we leave it in the hands of an independent body, we are still going to face the same problem all over Africa. You cannot expect me going for a second term and then appointing the election management body, then expect me not to interfere with them. It's not possible. So we have to look at the issues of the institutions. How are these bodies going to appoint? We have to make sure we have an independent body. When we say independent body, not council of religious people or not just riffraff people, we need to have people who are qualified themselves to make sure that this body is totally independent. So in the case of Nigeria, this has been going on for quite a long time. They did not learn from the last election. The incumbent appointed the electoral commissioner, or you call him returning officer, whatever it is. So what happened? The same thing happened. Then they appoint this incumbent, President Buhari appointed the current electoral commissioner. The same thing happened. So Nigeria is a big nation, well-educated people, with all what they have, the money and everything they have, they fail their citizens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's go to Lawyer Kanu. Lawyer Kanu, we're talking about institutions. I feel like institutions is a whole show of itself. Looking at how institutions are managed and developed in the African continent and around the world. Because when it comes to power, obviously politicians are voted for, but sometimes it's these institutions that make the big decisions about things. What do you think about the appointment of election authorities, the commissioners? What's your take? What do you think? Is that something that if the continent or African countries consider having independent bodies that can be appointed, and the influence of the president or something does not have to be, the president has no power to appoint, would that make a difference?
Yeah, it's an important issue my colleague and comrade raised in the studio about the appointment of electoral commissioners by the president. But I don't want to limit it to the electoral commission because you have the police. The police to play a major role in elections. The Head of the police is appointed by the sitting president. So this, just like what he said, is really a constitutional issue here. The framers. With that means we give a lot of powers to the president. In fact, you see, I will come to Sierra Leone. I don't want to repeat cut corners here. I want to face Sierra Leone as an issue here. Because Sierra Leone, the framers, they gave the president so much power that at the end of the day, at times I said, without the constitution, the president actually don't need parliament. Because with his executive powers, discretionary powers, they are so huge, so powerful, that they can do away with parliaments. And coming back to this issue of institutions being the head is appointed by the president. I know what my colleague is trying to state in the studio, that these heads have been appointed by the president. They're gonna have their loyalty, quote unquote, here to the president, to the person that appointed with the president. For example, let's look the last appointment. We have a northern president that appoints a northern electoral commissioner. That is over. And we have a southeastern president who have appointed a southern as an electoral commissioner, Mohamed Kone. But to be fair to Umfa Ali and Mohamed Kone, it's not their fault. These are educated people with vast experience. So I cannot say they are not qualified. So it's a spot on thing. I agree with my learned colleague in the studio that is something that we need to review in the future. We need to have special bodies to appoint the police boss, the electoral commissioner, the military boss. So
Okay.
it's something well spot on by my colleague.
Okay, let's go to Canada. Mr. Masare, what do you think when it comes to institutions? Particularly now, we're putting the spotlight, we're putting electoral commissioners, the guys that run and manage the election. They're like the referees. They're the ones that will say, this is it, this is what's happening. And we're now looking at their independence. What's your experience? What do you think we can do to make that process, give it more credibility?
Thank you very much again. It is ideal for those bodies to be independent. However, based on what we have, it is also vital for these people to know and understand their office. The commissioners in the United States are appointed by the sitting president. But these people, once they take oath of office, they perform what they were appointed to do. So it is not also about who appoints who, but it is the civic responsibilities we have as people to carry on things that we should be doing for the better of Sierra Leone. The appointment of commissioner, for example, in Sierra Leone, must, according to Chapter 5 of the Constitution, Section 32, must be appointed by the president. However, the parties involved should be consulted and they must also agree to this appointment. So again, let me reiterate, it is ideal for us to have independent bodies, maybe elected commissioners, elected head of police. That is ideal. But according to the constitution, let's work with what we have today. And if we are to work with what we have today, all what we should be doing is these people should hold their office according to the way it is stipulated by the constitution. They should be doing the things they are mandated to do rightly and justly. So it is all about ethics. It is all about the love of the country. It is all about what do you want to, how do you want to see Sierra Leone, and where do you want to see Sierra Leone in number of years. So If we have that mindset as humans, as Sierra Leoneans, I believe appointment will not be an issue because you will appoint me, and if you want me to bend the curve, I don't know, I cannot do that because the law says shouldn't do that. I'm sorry. And you cannot hire me immediately like that as a commissioner because once you appoint me in there, it is very difficult for you to push me if the other parties are not adhere to what you want to do, especially if you're doing the right thing. So it is not about appointment, it is about civic responsibility.
Okay, I think that's a very good comparison you've made there. We see people being appointed here in the United Kingdom, for example, and they're answerable to the Prime Minister. But when it comes to integrity, they're ready to put their job in the line. I think that's something for another show because we spend hours there if we want to talk about, why do we have in the international world you see experts and lawyers and they don't joke with their credibility, and if you are their boss they would rather lose their job, for example, than compromising. We see that many times in the Western world. We don't know what's the problem in Sierra Leone. Maybe institutions have to come in because there are other factors playing behind the scene. Now, before we continue the debate, I just want to look at our Facebook feed. We have Majalo saying there, this is a brilliant show. And there's someone saying there's technical issues. I know we have some technical problems that our technical guys have tried to fix. Hopefully, we are back and going. I want to start with you before I go to the other guest. Let's talk about the election observers. I know you said we shouldn't have, it's irrelevant. We should be able to monitor our elections as Sierra Leoneans, Nigerians, Ghanaians. Why should, people come to observe us? Well, because maybe it's the history. We have a very, very challenging history in Africa, when it comes to democracy. Obviously, the West is not perfect. They've had to move hundreds of years before they get to where they are. What do you think we can learn? I know you have a problem with it, but what do you think we can learn? Is there anything we can learn from international observers? Is there anything they can do by being there? Does it mean that people know that, okay, we've got international body? Because I've had political parties, many political parties, particularly the opposition, not only in Sierra Leone, around the African continent, they want international observers there. It's like they're praying for the international media to spot the light. Is it because they're worried that there's going to be malpractice? And if that's the case, what can we learn? Is there anything?
No. There is nothing we can learn from them. Rather than the showcase of power and follow where the money is. Going back, I refuse to go to Sierra Leone issues at the moment. I'm going back to Nigeria. We've seen so many international observers. What did they do? Nothing. What statement did they come up with? Nothing. One is a waste of money, is a waste of time. Nigeria themselves supposed to have the ability to conduct elections without having elections observers. But we keep depending on the issue of elections of observers. At the end of the day, when the results are announced, they will endorse them, go back to their capitals and report and say the election is fine. They've I've never seen where election observers overturn a malpractice of any election.
Mm-hmm.
Never. I've not. You can correct me. Maybe my colleagues will do that. But we have to start looking at the issue of election observers. Are they fit for purpose?
Mm-hmm.
We have to start looking at. A lot of African continent, they keep crying, we need the election observer, we need ECOWAS, we need the AU, we need the European Union. For what? These people are there for themselves. They are not there for the benefit of the ordinary Sierra Leonean or the ordinary Nigerian, the ordinary Guineans. They are not there for that. But it's not everything that is doom and gloom. We are still coming from the dark ages of the continent. We've came a long way. But the fact that we now have democracy, we can still conduct our own business. But most capitals, most African countries cannot even spend their own GDP to print their own ballot papers. This is where the international community is coming all the time because they spend their money. So they follow where their money is. They decide what kind of government.
Okay.
This is all about the international community.
Okay, before I go to Mr. Masare, I just want to go back to the National Democratic Institute and International Republican Institute Joint International Election Observer Mission IM final report on the elections in Nigeria. Okay, it says this. There are many things the report said, but it said there were improvements in election administration, advances in results transparency, increased competitiveness in the presidential race. Okay, but it talked about challenges. It says there were significant logistical, technological, and communications failures by the INEC. There were divisive rhetoric by political parties, political violence, regional disparities in electoral integrity, and declaring that instance of vote manipulation and marginalization of key population. Obviously, you can see the challenges there. There were also recommendations. Recommendations were genuine and reviewed dedication to improving election and democratic processes, fighting corruption and providing Nigerian citizens with responsive and trusted institution. Mr. Mansari, you can see there, obviously, lawyer Kamara, I don't have faith in these reports. What do you think? Obviously, these are recommendations, and obviously the idea about this show is also to learn from good practice around the world. These are the recommendations. These are the challenges. What's your take going forward? Elections in Africa, what can we learn? Particularly taking what's happening in Nigeria and what the observers are saying.
I'm a vehement supporter of international observers in elections, especially in post-conflict countries like ours and in struggling economies. Case studies, Sierra Leone. We don't have, at the moment, the heightened capacity to conduct our own election. We don't even have the funds to do so. And we have elections that one party doesn't trust the other party, or one party doesn't trust the incumbent way of doing things. This is where international observers need to step in, give us accreditation in our elections. According to the UN, election observers is a valuable tool for improving the quality of elections. And they provide sufficient strength in endorsing elections in these host countries. So you can imagine if, for example, what is going on in Sierra Leone, we don't have any international observers. And at the end of the day, the opposition party doesn't trust what is going on. And if the incumbent emerges winner with no observers, what do you think will happen? But in this case, this is where we have observers that have been all over the place in Africa and other places, not only in Africa, to accredit this result and give credence to elections. So for me, I am strictly not. Maybe this is an understatement. I am a vehement supporter of observers, especially for countries that don't have capacity elections. So without these observers, there is an impasse for us to do what we're supposed to do right. Case study, there is an issue in Sierra Leone. And who are the people mandating or mediating this? These are the international bodies. We cannot do that for ourselves because it will bring chaos. If two people are fighting and there is no referee or a game of a soccer match is playing, no referee, what will happen? There must be a referee, and this referee must be trusted. And when he is not trusted, we need someone independent to help us do carry on our elections. It is not something that is being subjected to us. Let me state this again. Public Section Act 2012, Section 57, 58, 59, and 160 provide provisions for us to bring in election international observers. So it is part of our laws. And hence, it makes it legitimate for these people to be around. So that said, I am for election observers.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Masai. Obviously, that's why we're here. This is the platform for debate. Different ideas, different views. We come together to push the African agenda, but also the issues affecting the diaspora. You're watching us on Global Voices on our online platforms on Channel 33, and we're bringing you this show from our studios in London. I want to go now to Lawyer Amidu Ayub Kanu. Mr. Kanu, you've had the conversation there. What do you think we can learn from international observers? What can they bring to the table? What's their role that you think can create an impact?
So small. I can understand where both my compatriots are coming from, for and against the issue of election observers in Africa as a whole, taking into consideration what has recently happened in Nigeria. Did they influence anything? The jury is out there, but the majority of the people are viewing it as their impact is little or nothing. But again, if it's been provided for, or is a good practice that have been happening, to invite them to come in and observe, so be it. That's the law, and we have to follow the law. And their impact, actually, what I've seen in Sierra Leone since 1996 is for their role mostly is after the elections, and this can also be said for Nigeria, Ghana, and other things. They are mostly there to console the loser. They will come, they will visit you. Once you start seeing these international observers visiting someone or talking to someone, from what I've observed, that person is the loser. The moment they start visiting you after election or after vote, if you're in that camp, just say, there's nothing good for me here. Because I remember with Khalifa Smart, the late Dr. John Khalifa Smart, 1996. That is the first place I observed. After the second round, the late Ahmed Chijan Kaba as well. They went to him, start talking to him. Automatically, at the end of the day, he's the loser. He was the loser for those elections. So the international observer, maybe they are just to alert the incumbents or the government here that we are watching you. But at the end of the day, really they don't have powers to override like the chief electoral commissioner that is provided, because he has the mandate to call the results here. And it boils down, this issue boils down to the credibility or the integrity of we the citizens. Just like what we are trying to state earlier on, that when you are appointed, because for you to preserve your integrity, you will not do what the person that appoints you, the president here. Once you are someone of high integrity, you will not compromise it. So, and the issue of sovereignty plays there as well. We cannot delegate our problems to the international body. When are we going to be matured enough or credibly here to administer our own things, our own issues and challenges? Because the electoral commissioner should be a Nigerian or a Sierra Leonean. Yeah. But if that Sierra Leone or Nigerian is not credible, both factions are attacking him, then where are we as a nation? That are we not good enough to administer our own stuff, our own things? Don't we deserve independence, or are we not fit to have independence? Because if we are credible enough, to be honest with you, these guys, we don't need them. But as it is, just like what the guy in Canada is implying, or a compatriot in Canada is implying, because both factions don't trust each other, they rely on these international observers. But unfortunately, these international observers don't have the legal powers to override whatever the chief electoral commissioner have declared or going to the radio or television and declared. So at the end of the day, again, I understand my brother in the studio to say they have no relevance, according to his opinion. That one is understandable as well, taking into consideration the malpractices that happen in Nigeria elections. So it's a 50-50 thing, but at the end again, it all boils down to credibility. We, the citizens, have to be credible, have to prioritize our nation, our country here. That we have to be patriotic. What we are doing is for the benefit of our country, not for ourselves. Because it came down to the selfishness and the greed. Because most of these guys that are appointed into these positions, they are well educated and they're experienced. They've traveled worldwide. They've seen how things are done properly. But because of one way or the other, we are not genuine. We are so selfish. We don't care about the next generation. We are all the political parties here. It's not a problem for only one party or it's a group of people. It boils down to us individually and collectively here. What do we want for our nation? But oh God, we just care about ourselves individually. Greed. Because all this desperation you are seeing is lack of opportunities. The government of the day, the opposition party, even if the opposition party wins, or the government of the day regains or wins and have a second term, the opportunities or the positions they are not even enough for their own supporters. This is the problem, it's lack of opportunities that is causing this desperation. Look, SFPP came to power 2018. Up till now, their followers are grumbling, moaning around. They are not having jobs. They are not having opportunities. The same thing happened with APC, 2007 to 2018. Up to the time we come to, they are in opposition now. We are in opposition. Many people are moaning that the government didn't give me this job or that contract or this since they came to power. Up to them, they left nothing because lack of opportunities. So you see, that's the selfishness again from both sides here. If I can drop it down to Sierra Leone, come down, limit it to Sierra Leone, is the lack of opportunities that is causing this desperation from the opposition and from the government of the day. Because they cannot even satisfy their own supporters, not to talk about satisfying Sierra Leoneans, even 60% or 70%. They cannot, because they are so mean, greed, and corrupt to use the resources. Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I can see obviously, you know, it's a process of development for Africa. We have to also appreciate that African democracy is young and there's so much to learn. But also, this is why we have shows like this. You know, obviously, you know, the voices of the diasporas, people like yourself that have seen a lot happening around the world, and we can all agree, like lawyer Kamara said, in America, we saw what happened, even demonstrations. We saw what happened when Donald Trump lost the elections, and it was a surprise for the Western world that you can have a country that is probably seen as a beacon of democracy, or where people learn things about election. Definitely, they go around the world teaching people democracy, and they were even surprised that you have Americans storming their parliaments and causing trouble. So we have to understand this is a global issue. I think tensions becomes high when elections are coming closer and people are losing power, people are coming in. But I think this show is about what do we learn. And before we end this show tonight, I know one of my guests, obviously I have some other commitments. So I'll go to him first, Mr. Mansari. I want to go to you before I come back to London here. What do you think? What's your message to Sierra Leoneans, to Africans, Sierra Leoneans in the diaspora? Because I always say that platforms like this gives the opportunity for us to propagate change, try to see how best we can try to push a positive agenda. Many will say there's not many positivity to talk about. What do you think? What's your message? What can we send to not only Sierra Leone but the continent? What do you think is the message? What can we take? Because this year is a busy year for elections. There are many elections coming. What's your final word?
Thank you very much. My final word is I'm pivot to um, maybe subject. Um, First, let me observers. Observers are there to observe and give recommendations. It is up to the country's institutions to take recommendations. If the elections are being marred by election malpractices, they will recommend that. And it is up to those parties to go there and maybe go to the judiciary and say, okay, this is what happened, this is our issue, and it is up to them to be fair and just. That I want this opportunity today to have it a very, let me say, giant blame to the diaspora, including myself, because I'm part of the diaspora. We are, even though we are in the West enjoying democracy and enjoying all the laws and values of uh, the institutions that we're enjoying here, but when we go home, we tend to change from the enjoyed whilst we are living in the West and bend the curve when we go back home. And the thing that is most hypocritical, the hypocrisy in our as diaspora, is we will see what is going wrong, and yet we support the wrong, even though we are here enjoying the fundamental right of democracy, but yet we are supporting what is wrong back home. And this is baffles me.
Okay, okay. It looks like we're having some technical problem there with um, Mr. Masari. Mr. Masari, can you hear us?
Can
Okay, the line is a little bit shaky. Mr. Masari, bear with us. My our technical manager is going to try and fix it. I'll come back to you because I think you were putting very, very important point there about diaspora being hypocritical. We're here, we're enjoying all the the legal freedoms and constitutional rights, but when we go back home, we are not speaking truth, and I think that's what he's trying to say. Let me
Yes,
before I
that's
come
what I was
to.
saying.
Okay,
Correct.
good. I think I can hear you now. Let's hear
Yeah,
you.
exactly. That's what I was saying.
Okay.
Exactly. This is the point. We are, we have all, yet we are here looking at what is going back home, but yet we support what is going on, but even if it's wrong, but because we are supporting one party and say, okay, this is my party, but yet I'm here having all the freedoms, my kids are having all the rights, all the amenities, good roads, good hospitals, everything, but yet I am there backing something that is not correct. That's where the hypocrisy is for the diaspora. Until we change, this will never be right back home. Thank you.
Okay. I think we've had that before here, even in our previous show. People saying, diasporas are sitting in their sofas in their very luxurious flats or, I don't know, mansion or whatever, and, dictating what's happening, or seeking to dictate, we should correct that, in Sierra Leone, for example. I think, I have to say there are many diasporas that genuinely want change for Sierra Leone. I've spoken to many people. But yes, social media, you can see there is a lot of, lot of views that you would say that is not even happening in the West, but maybe supporting it back home in Sierra Leone. Let me go to Lawyer Amid before I come to Lawyer Kamara here. Lawyer Amid, we're rounding up now. What do you think is the lessons that we can send to our people back home in Sierra Leone, or maybe in an African continent? What can we learn? Like I said, this is, for me, it can be referred to as a global issue, because you have places in Europe, of course, in the UK, places like Germany, we do have relatively calm elections, we have to say. But in America, for example, what happened with the Trump era and after that, and even now, you could say there is instability. There was. But again, the systems are there. I think one thing we can learn also from the America, we have to distinguish what happened in America. In America, there was a situation where you had the police stepping in, you had the court system taking, and the situation was calm. And, the establishment, everyone in the establishment, although maybe some of the Republicans were supporting some of it, but many of them, you see them saying that this is wrong. And I think that's something we have to learn in the African continent as well. And I subscribe to what we're saying here, that if you can see that something is wrong, but this is your party, can you say this is wrong? And, try and be honest. And we see that in the international world, sometimes even in the UK, for example, where, there will be members of parliament for the Labour Party that would say, this is wrong, even though it's in the interest of their party, as long as it comes to national interest. So let me go to Lawyer Kanu. Lawyer Kanu, what's your message? What's your final word?
Yeah, my final word, I would take a cue here from my compatriots in Canada about the hypocrisy of the diaspora. Yes, you got it 100% correct. Because we should be in the position of agitating to say this practice is not good for the betterment of Sierra Leone. Even though I'm an APC person or you're an SLPP person, let's look at the common good here for the greater interest of our country. That what this president or that president is doing, it will not advance us, it will not create unity in the country. And we also should be in the position that, for example, when some of us in the diaspora here join our brothers in Sierra Leone to reform, even some of our brothers in the diaspora are attacking us. So let's reform. Which democracy or country in the world that will see reformers say these are hired agents? We have colleagues in the diaspora say these guys have been bought by a social person to create chaos. It's so disingenuous. This is a hypocrisy. We just want a shortcut. And at times, shortcuts will lead you to the longest routes. Whereas, if you go through the process, genuinely, you will arrive so quick that the person that is taking shortcuts guessing. Because shortcuts are another way of guess. You guess it didn't work, you guess it didn't work, you guess it didn't work. So we in the diasporas, at least, we should be agitating for proper governance, irrespective of who is in, which party is in power or who is the president. That's our mistakes. Most of us, or all of us here, even me, I'm guilty of that. You have to be honest. But with time, you will see the lights. And when you see the light through knowledge and experience, it's your position to agitate. And we, again, I would like to end by stating this again briefly, please. We in the diaspora have to agitate about the creation of opportunities for any government that is there. If we don't create, if the government of the day did not create opportunities, even their own supporters will come back at them at the end of their own tenure or whenever they are voted out. So we must be holding them according to the manifestos they promise us. If you promise us that you're going to focus on agriculture or school or infrastructure, at the end of, after 2-3 years, we need to start questioning them. Like the branch from the diaspora said, look, you promised us A, B, C, D. You haven't even delivered A, B. Because I'm assuming that those of us in diaspora, if you are content, you are working hard, you don't need much from Sierra Leone any longer. Just work on your own. If you are hardworking, you can get the basic here and get the basic in Sierra Leone. So you're in a comfortable position to question or hold the government of the day into account. But again, selfishness coming and greed. Okay, sir.
Thank you very much. Ending there is Lawyer Amido Ayub. Obviously, the message here is let's come together, work together as Sierra Leoneans. Hypocrisy has been a mantra there from my guests there, and you can see that being frank and honest about the issues that we have. And obviously, we're not perfect, but we're making progress. Before we round up, Lawyer Kamara, we've had about an hour or so debate about the issues affecting the African continent in the context of elections. We know democracy is a very complex process, and when it comes to elections, it looks like tensions get higher and things get to the fore. What is your message to the African continent? What can we learn? How can we start moving? Even if we're taking baby steps, what can we do to start getting to that point? What do you think is the key message here?
Well, thank you once again, Mr. Alpha. We are coming towards the end of this show. I want to thank my colleagues there in first place, and Mr. Mansari from Canada. I think finally we all agree on one issue, the issue of the diasporans. That one, I agree with you. But what can we take? We've came a long way as a continent. But this issue is not about Sierra Leone only. It's about the whole of Africa, especially West Africa. We came a long way. We used to be branded as the dark continent. Now we have democracies all over. We are learning, and we are still learning from the West. It took the West over 50 years to 60 years to have what they have in today, the institutions. One thing we need to do, this is for all African countries, let them go back and look at their institutions. Democracy just don't come like that overnight. You have to build the foundation first, and the foundations are the institutions. If you don't build the institutions properly, then you're looking for trouble. This is why we're having problems, because we refuse to build the institutions. Then we want to practice democracy. We have to look at the role of the judiciary. We have to look at the role of the military itself. We have to look at the role of the civil servant. These are the institutions you have to start putting in place. The local government, local authorities, the role they will play in this parliament, So this institution, when we put them together, we start seeing light. But Mr. Alpha, I'm afraid we still have a long way to go in the continent. But we are coming from those dark ages. I'm coming to Sierra Leone, and I'm appealing. I'm appealing to everybody. The election is going to take place, and I believe so. 7 days from now, it's going to take place. And after this election, let us have one country. Let us look at our institutions. Let us look at our constitution, the 1991 constitution. I have a problem with that constitution. Is this constitution fit for purpose? I said no. The time the drafters draft this constitution was good for that time. But by now, we are now in the 21st century. There is a lot of loopholes. A few days ago, I was listening to one of our, the great man, Charles Magai. He was talking about certain issues about the president after the term of office, when he's giving back another 3 months, and the reason why the president is behaving short-term. These are issues of constitution. Parliament should go back and look at this constitution. I realized, or I can recall, the former government, the APC government, started looking at the 1991 constitution. I don't know what happened. I'm asking or pleading to every Sierra Leoneans, after the election, let us go back, all Sierra Leoneans, let us have a referendum, let us look at the issue of the constitution. That constitution is causing problem in Sierra Leone. Until then, we are looking for more trouble. By ending this, I wish all Sierra Leoneans a happy election and looking forward for a peace. And for the international observers, I know they are there not to conduct our elections. They are there to observe. And let us don't put our trust in them. Thank you very much.
Okay, eloquently ended there. I want to thank our guest. Obviously, Lawyer Abubakar Black here, who is, the chair of Crawford Tenant, and you've called here. We had in London Lawyer Amidou Ayub, an expert in these issues, a lawyer, of course, and also we have in Canada someone who understands the issues affecting some of this, Mr. Dauda Mansare, who is also president of the APC Ontario chapter in Canada. Now, it's been a fascinating conversation here. As usual, you're watching Global Voices on our online platforms and on Channel 33, and keep following us. It has been a discussion. We talked about free and fair elections, the role of observers. We also talked about the hypocrisy allegations here. Obviously, these are things that some of the panelists have seen and experienced, and I think it has been a discussion about Africa, but also some of our guests mentioned eloquently about the fact that Africa has a young democracy and we're progressing. I think Kamara talked about it here, and we have to. I think one of the things that come up also was institutions and our constitution. So it's been a very, very interesting debate. I've learned so much here this afternoon, and I think the idea about this show is about bringing international standards to the fore, discussing about issues affecting diasporas. So you've been watching AYV Global Voices from our studios here in London. With me, Alpha Jallo, we're broadcasting from London. And we want to thank our guests. We want to thank our viewers on Facebook. Thank you for following us. Stay tuned on AYV, on Channel 33, and our other platforms. We'll be back next week. The show that brings the diaspora's views and international issues. Until we see you again, stay tuned. Follow the processes. As you heard from our guests there, we want a peace and, tranquility in Sierra Leone, and we are calling on all parties to observe the elections. We want to learn from what's happening around the globe and bring the good things back in Sierra Leone. Stay tuned there with me, Alpha Jallo. This is where we end Global Voices for this episode. Thank you.
We are now days away from Sierra Leone's dates with destiny, the June 24th general election. In this defining moment in the history of Sierra Leone, here at AYV, we recognize the mantle thrust upon us to be the voice of the nation fully.
We take our task to ensure fair coverage seriously. We intend to honor our pledge to you, to be your home of all things credible, factual and all times balanced news. Totally, this is our commitment to you.
We have witnessed non-stop hours of groundbreaking broadcast in an effort that saw AYV rolled out 8 studios across Sierra Leone at Tar Hill, Aberdeen, Makeni, Kenema, Bo and London, with almost 3 kilometers of coaxial cable laid connecting 4 ground